This Saturday's presidential election in Afghanistan certainly signals change, with the outgoing Hamid Karzai stepping down after 12 years and U.S.-led forces drawing down, perhaps even packing up. You could say there's a mix of anticipation and foreboding. Anticipation of the climax of a campaign where TV debates have proved hugely popular, where there's been much attention. Foreboding following the Taliban's vow to disrupt the poll. Last week's bombing and siege of a Kabul anti-landmine charity that left 2 dead, including a girl, just one of a string of attacks. Deadly violence in Afghanistan up nearly 15% last year, just as foreign troops were drawing down. That drawdown has further heightened the weight of regional players in these elections, neighbors who've all stepped up aid to Afghanistan as they jostle for influence. Officially, Pakistan insists it's about platforms, not people. Many in Islamabad, though, see the hand of India behind some of the candidates, while Delhi accuses Pakistan in attacks targeting its interests inside of Afghanistan. We're going to look at that bit of acrimony and also the broader picture going forth. Today in the France 24 debate, the scramble for Afghanistan. And with us to talk about it, Afghanistan's ambassador to France, Assad OMER. Welcome back to the show. Welcome as well to Pakistan's ambassador to Paris, IQBAL. Nice to see you again. She was the New York Times bureau chief in Kabul. Now Alissa Johannsen RUBIN hangs her hat in the French capital.
Hello.
Nice to see you. And from Delhi, our correspondent Vikram SINGH, who is just back from Kabul. Nice to see you, Vikram, as well. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. 48 hours to go, a lot of uncertainty for what's always a heavy lift, organizing an election in Afghanistan.
A few days ahead of the presidential vote, thousands of ballot boxes were transported to polling stations across Afghanistan.
The movement plan is going based on our schedule, and we already delivered to the 59 district of Afghanistan.
After 13 years in power, President Hamid Karzai will leave office since he cannot run for a third term. 8 candidates hope to succeed him, with 3 frontrunners. If the election goes smoothly, it would be Afghanistan's first democratic transition.
Afghanistan, in the coming days, could see for the very first time a new leader take power through nonviolent means. This would be the very first time that a sitting leader would willingly hand over the power to a new leader.
The main concern is the growing unrest. In recent months, the Taliban, who were ousted by foreign troops 13 years ago, have stepped up their attacks. The group has vowed to disrupt Sunday's vote. 6 policemen were killed in an explosion near the Interior Ministry on Wednesday.
The tragedy of where we stand today in Afghanistan is that all of this fighting over the last dozen years has settled nothing. And that in itself, that simple fact, is profoundly unsettling.
While Afghans await a political transition, NATO troops are leaving the country. The 3 frontrunners have said they'd sign a pact with Washington to keep in Afghanistan a residual U.S. force would help the national security forces fight the Taliban.
All right, a deal that's not yet signed. We'll talk about that perhaps a little bit later on. First, though, let's go to Vikram SINGH. Vikram, what's the campaign been like?
Well, there's been immense enthusiasm, really, amongst Afghans for this election campaign. I was just in Kabul last week, and you know, the major candidates, they've been having rallies, they've been holding rallies across the country, and the turnout has been immense, which reflects really the fact that the Afghan people are engaged with this election, that there is a democratic process that is taking place. That being said, you know, there has been also, of course, a lot of concerns. There have been a lot of concerns about security. There have been concerns about the legitimacy of these elections and credibility. But the underlying, you know, emotion, if I could use the word, is one of enthusiasm. People are excited, enthusiastic about this election.
It's really in stark contrast with the reporting we've had on it from here.
Well, the situation on the ground, often is different because for Afghans especially, the focus, of course, there is a focus on the attacks, on the security problems, but for them also they see it as a defining moment. So that's what they've been focusing on. I spoke to some young Afghan political activists who said that, we understand that we could be attacked when we go to vote, but this is a moment that we just cannot let slip. We can't let this moment slip by. This is the moment that will define the destiny of this country. So Afghans are not naive. They understand that there are problems, but they also see that there is perhaps a potential for solutions in this election.
Alissa, when you think back to the 2009 presidential election campaign, do you also, like Vikram, see the glass half full when you look at this campaign?
Yes, and I think as Vikram said, it's a very different situation because it isn't a re-election. There's not an option to re-elect President Karzai, so we really have a wide open race. And I think for Afghans, in many ways, that's very exciting, and they're listening very hard. It's an oral culture. People don't sit down and read policy papers, but they pay a lot of attention to what people say. And everything I've read and my friends I've talked to there are extremely engaged.
It's ironic because it's at a time, and I guess we can ask Vikram about this later, where it's getting more and more dangerous to go and report the story.
I think it's been more dangerous in Kabul. It's unclear to me whether it's any more dangerous outside of Kabul than it's been for a long time. It's always been very difficult to travel between places in Afghanistan. Once you're in a place, you can a city, you're probably going to be all right, but in between it's not so good. Now, recently in Kabul, we've seen a string of attacks, and I think that, of course, will make people very nervous on election day. On the other hand, Kabul does have an enormous number of security forces, so they could well be able to secure it. And I believe the city is completely shut down. The ambassador might know better than me, but I think as of today, it's pretty much shut.
All right, reactions coming in from viewers. One saying, Karzai's speech on the election and the transfer of power is history in the making for Afghanistan. This is ironic because it's coupled again with this drawdown of U.S.-led forces. What's your prediction for how things will go on election day and how things will go as well when there's the vote counting?
We are really, as we're saying, that enthusiastic, and we are really very happy that the election will very well prepared. Our independent election commission, they're doing very well, and all more than about 7,000 polling centers are open. We, according to the Ministry of Interior, maybe about 10%. We hope that less than 10% polling centers may remain closed on 5th of April, but the majority will be open, and really we are very happy that is a first time there is a democratic and peaceful transition, because the last time, of course, was Mr. Karzai was succeeding to himself, but now is a transition from one elected president to another elected president, and that's very important for Afghan people, and we are thankful to all of us, also our friends and partners that help us to really to be at this point that Afghanistan can organize himself the election, and we hope that will sustain.
All right. Some people not seeing the glass half full. Doug saying, unfortunately, this country's beyond help. And sort of flies in the face of what we've just heard from the rest of the panel. Ghalib, IQBAL, that's the important point, though, isn't it? It's not Hamid Karzai who's running for president this time.
No, it's a very good news that we are having elections, and probably we feel that this is the most important elections the world has seen, because the results of these elections are going to determine the regional politics, and in particular and in general the politics of the world. We are happy for our Afghan friends and Afghan brothers because they are next door and this is going to be their third election. The most important thing is that these elections which take place should be a direction towards an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned resolution to the problems of the country. It's very important that there is stability in Afghanistan because Pakistan's stability stems from the stability of Afghanistan. But a few things which I would like to highlight. One is that after the drawdown, after the withdrawal of the troops, I think there should not be a vacuum created, because if there is a vacuum created, either politically or militarily, then those forces which have their vested interest and those forces which are probably not the state actors could influence the outcome of the whole situation over there.
So the U.S., for instance, should keep a residual, what they're talking about, 10,000 troops perhaps, a residual force in...
I cannot talk about U.S., but this is my opinion because the Afghan troops are in good condition and they need to be able to take the situation, the security situation, in a very professional manner. But the world should stay engaged with Afghanistan. You abandon Afghanistan now as it was done earlier, we are going to have serious problems. The world should be engaged with Afghanistan for reconstruction, for the economic benefits, for the economic progress of that country, because that is going to bring about the prosperity in the people. And elections, electing a president over there, it's very important. This is going to give them the strength and they're going to learn about the power of their vote. When that is done, ultimately that leads to a peaceful solution. And what Ambassador Assad was talking about, that this is going to be a transition from one elected president to another president, I can relate to that because in Pakistan, during the last election, we had for the first time transition from one elected government to another elected government. And we take pride in that. And I'm sure our friends across the border are going to take pride in that.
So, Vikram Singh, the drawdown, is it seen on the campaign trail as part of the problem or part of the solution?
Well, it does depend on who you speak to. But a lot of Afghans also believe that, once the foreign troops leave, there could be a new possibility for peace because, for the Taliban, of course, one of the major issues they've had is the presence of foreign troops on Afghan soil. And, some of even my Western-leaning friends, you could say, even they welcome the drawdown to an extent because they feel that at least that reason for conflict will have been removed. That being said, of course, there are concerns about the stability of the governments in Kabul once those troops leave. But Afghans have faith in their army. The army definitely has improved a lot over the last few years. And overall, the drawdown is not necessarily seen as a catastrophic event. That somehow it's portrayed. Sometimes it's portrayed like that internationally. But for Afghans, it's not such a bad thing.
All right, and which brings us to the next point, which is who to vote for. There are three main candidates that come up in conversation, Zalmay Rasul, Abdullah, and Ashraf Ghani Ahmadzai. A tricky task for the main contenders when we talked about it, with Hamid Karzai stepping down. He's had some rifts, shall we say, in the past, most notably with the West. The main contenders putting some light between themselves and Karzai, but not too much.
We need to honor President Karzai for the historic role of transferring power so that his successors, me and others, will follow the path that we can live in honor and dignity in our country, and that transfer of power becomes routine.
All right, the transfer of power, but fast, say others. Most notably, the man who finished second in the fraud-marred 2009 election, Abdullah, predicting a first-round knockout.
About different scenarios, we do not dismiss other scenarios, but it's most likely that there is one-round election and there will not be a long period of uncertainty.
Do you see there being just one round, Alissa?
I don't see there being just one round. But it's very difficult to tell. The polls that are out there suggest that both Ashraf Ghani and Dr. Abdullah are very close. Now, whether they're accurate, polling is not a refined art in Afghanistan, so it's really difficult to know. But
what sets them apart, the two of them?
Well, one of the big things that sets them apart is that Ashraf Ghani is a Pashtun, and Dr. Abdullah, although he is technically half Pashtun, is identified with the Panjshir and with the Tajik ethnic group. He's campaigned very hard in Pashtun areas, so I think he's certainly reaching out. But they both are really imbued with a Western, certain Western ties. I would say that Dr. Ghani, Ashraf Ghani, has taken a more nationalist approach in recent years on a number of issues. He's actually worked for the World Bank, so it's a bit of a change for him to do that. Whereas Dr. Abdullah, particularly after the last election where he ended up deciding not to finally compete with President Karzai and withdrew, has spent a lot of time in the West touring, and so he has very strong Western links, and I think looks for some backing from the West. So I think that's a bit of a complex situation for Afghans to sort through.
All right, so those are the two main ones that we've spoken to, but there's a third.
There's also Zalmay Rasool, who is very important and very. He's a very calm person. He's someone who's been endorsed by the Karzai many in the Karzai family, not everyone. It's a big family, and I think there are many people who think he would be a kind of a neutral choice, and he has an interesting team. Right. And so that's also important.
Zalmay Rasool, who agrees with all the other candidates, the number one issue is to silence the guns.
I think that's stability, peace, and security in Afghanistan.
And how are you going to make sure? Are you going to talk to the Taliban?
Yes, I will talk to those Taliban who want to come to peace.
Of course, talking to the Taliban has been a stop-and-start process, both in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
No, talking to Taliban and talking to all the stakeholders is important because we must give peace a chance. And if we cannot give peace a chance, the alternate you have is a war. And I think it's important for all of us that we give peace a chance in our region. It's not only that we have been talking to Taliban, yes, but all other stakeholders should also be able to talk to Taliban, because once it's all-inclusive activity in Afghanistan, it is going to bring stability rather quickly. Irrespective of the groupings or which group they are from, or party X or Y or candidate A, B, C, I think it's important that it's all-inclusive. We are negotiating with Taliban in Pakistan these days through two committees, one from their side, one from our side. And the world should also do the same, because other powers should also get involved and get engaged by talking to these people so that there is peace in Afghanistan. It's very important that we should have it now.
All right, I want to pick up on that when we come back. We're going to take a quick break. You're watching the France 24 debate.
Welcome to Reporters.
On April the 6th, 1994, Rwandan President Juvenal Habyarimana's plane was shot down by a missile. Within a day, the country was consumed by a murderous wave of violence. Millions were forced to flee, the country was reduced to ruins, the population was decimated. But what really happened during the last genocide of the 20th century? 20 years after the event, France 24 looks back on the origins and circumstances of the massacre.
Reporters on France 24 and France24.com.